Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video will be a little bit different from my usual vlog, and this time I'd like to introduce you guys how I became an interpreter. I'm doing this because I often receive a lot of questions of how I became an interpreter and background of this process. So I hope you guys enjoy this video while showing myself studying at the cafe. So first, I'll talk about my background of studying English, and then after that, I'd like to explain how I got interested in the work of interpreter. And third, I will talk about my training at an interpreting school. And lastly, I would like to introduce you guys how I started my career as an interpreter. But if you have any questions, please leave some in the comment below. So let's get started. So first, I will talk about how I studied English. But this will be a very long story and I want to make it brief, so I'll just make it brief here, but maybe if I have some time, I would like to introduce on this topic in detail as well with my another video. But basically, I have been studying English when I was very little, like 5 years old, and all this while I have been studying as like my hobby. So from during the days in elementary school, I have been watching a lot of videos on YouTube in English or watch some Disney Channel movies or TV series, also listening to English songs, reading books and magazines in English, etc. Because I liked all these things, my English level was quite good since I was little, so I thought that it was one of my strong points. And as English has been part of my everyday life, I had this vague image that I wanted to do some work that involves using English someday. But at this point in time, I didn't really want to become an interpreter. So moving on to the next point, which is to talk about how I became interested into the interpreter work. But this is when I was in junior high school, and at that time I really liked celebrities like Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, and whenever all these Hollywood stars come to Japan, I saw them on TV, and next to them there were always an interpreter, and that's when I knew about the work of interpreter. And after that, when I was in college, I took an English class that happened to be based on the curriculum of an interpreting school. And after taking that English class, I gradually became interested in interpreting and thought it would be cool to handle a language as an expert in various fields. But still, at this point in time, I haven't decided yet to become an interpreter, and even when I talk with my friends about the future, I only had this vague idea of working as a corporate employee. But then, after that, a life-changing event happens to me. I was in college, I was in the junior year that time, and I happened to be introduced of an interpreting school from my friend, and I just applied for the course for the first time. I hope you can also check the video that I introduced about my training at an interpreting school, but when I applied, I still didn't have enough English level to start the interpreting training, so I belonged to the preparatory course. That was the first time for me to be exposed to a business English and realized that it was very difficult, but at the same time, I knew that there were enough room for me to improve my English skill. And after attending the interpreting school, I started to understand what kind of work an interpreter does, which actually made me more interested in. I thought it would match my personality as well and would be a very suitable job for me. For example, to be an interpreter, you need to constantly learn English, but since I liked learning English since I was little, I thought I could handle that. And not only English, you need to learn of various fields to become an interpreter, but I'm quite a curious type of person and I like to learn new things and expand my perspectives, so I thought this would be good for me too. And unlike the translator, Interpreter is a job that you need to work with someone else, and I didn't want to work all by myself for the whole time during my career, so I thought this would also match my preference. And another feature of interpreter that is different from translator is that for translators, you actually need to work in details and taking a long time reviewing over and over and submit your work. But for interpreter, it's more of a quick response, and I thought it would be more spontaneous. And as for my personality, I'm not really good at checking in details over and over again, but I'd rather focus more on efficiency and how quick I can do my work. So I thought interpreter would be very suitable for me. And as I started to understand about the work of interpreter more and more, I realized that I want to become an interpreter, and this is when I decided to be an interpreter someday. But just finishing the course at the interpreting school is very high level, and I almost gave up. But when I heard that the friend who introduced me to the interpreting school had already started her career as an interpreter, that made me very motivated to become one like her as soon as possible. And 3 years after I started training at an interpreting school, I started my career as an interpreter. But this was not that easy. I was working at a Japanese company after I graduated, but then I realized that the work there is not what I wanted to do, and I decided to change my job. And while searching for a new job, I always kept in mind to look for a job that excites me and can do what I really want to do. And so I kept on searching on the internet by typing interpreter space Tokyo space job all the time. But most of the companies hire people with experience, so I got discouraged and I thought there were no opportunities for me to start my career as an interpreter. But I didn't want to give up, so whenever I found a job that doesn't specify on how many years of experience I had in the job description, I applied as soon as I got interested. And I also thought that now is not the time for me to be so choosy, so I didn't care about getting a full-time job, and I just wanted to gain some kind of track record of working as an interpreter. So after 2 months of job hunting, I was lucky enough to get a job offer as an in-house interpreter at my current company. And currently, I work at a Japan office of an overseas government office. Simply put, it's like an embassy. I was very nervous at first because my previous job was in a completely different field and I had no experience as an interpreter. And I told myself that every interpreter that I admire, no matter how successful they are now, but they had the moment where they were not experienced and they were so nervous and they were new. Now it's been 2 years since I started working as an interpreter. Now I'm very much used to doing the interpreting for the everyday meetings at the office. And I also understand more about business and how it works compared to 2 years ago. And thanks to my experiences at work, I'm able to level up the courses at the interpreting school too. And recently, I was able to have a very good opportunity at work. Since I work at a Japan branch of an overseas government office, politicians and people from various ministries and agencies visit Japan from their home countries every year. And this includes people that are very high level or a very famous public figure. Usually, our office asks for a professional freelance interpreter at the highest level of Class A to do the interpreting for the VIPs. But the other day, I happened to receive an urgent request to interpret for a minister of a certain country. I was so nervous because I was interpreting for the most high-level person I've ever worked with. But the content of what I was interpreting was similar to what I had done many times as an in-house interpreter, so I was able to concentrate on the interpreting until the end, even though I was so nervous the whole time. Having this opportunity made me realize that those who can embrace a good opportunity are the ones that are always prepared. And this was a quote that my mom used to tell me when I was a student. So from now on and even in the future, I would like to be well prepared for any chances or opportunities that I may encounter. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for watching and please leave some comments if you have any. So see you next time.